Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, July 21st edition of the Daily Pulse, the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. Today, we kick off a brand new week with a Big Mouth Monday edition of the Daily Pulse. That's right. I'm joined here in studios by the empty chair, which means I get to annoy you all by my little lonesome. And I'm going to guess I'm going to annoy a few folks today with, just really some kind of information and some common sense information that I think is sometimes lacking out there. A couple of items on the Lowell City Council agenda for tomorrow night's meeting caught my eye, especially as they relate to things happening in the world around Lowell and how sometimes I get a sense the Mill City and people in the Mill City are the last ones to realize that the world around them has changed, but it has. And I'm going to show you how, and I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. But first, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, if I may. Ray Booten is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He's a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, you need to get in touch with Ray Booten today. And he's easy enough to find. realestaterayBooten.com is the web address. That's realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members at WellPoint. Your whole health is their whole point. Thank you, WellPoint. Thank you, Ray. We'll thank some other sponsors in a couple of minutes, but let's get right down to it. And I want to start. I want to take you back to June and a headline that came back to mind for me when I saw the Lowell City Council agenda released on Friday. The Lowell City Council meets every other Tuesday in the summers. It's actually every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, which means July 22nd, tomorrow night, the council will have a meeting. And there were a couple of agenda items there. I'm going to show them to you. But as background, let's go to this headline. This was from July 11th. Of this summer, a little bit over a month ago. And it's from Politico, a very left-leaning political online publication. And you see the headline there, "We've lost the culture war on climate." Subheading, U.S. government has long recognized greenhouse gases as a threat, but major rules to address them have failed to stick. And this up above was the tweet that I tipped this from, but it was an President Obama advisor who was quoted within the article saying the left strategy on climate change needs to be rethought because we've lost the culture war on climate. What that means is the people aren't buying it anymore. The people aren't buying the existing narrative, the popular narrative. Come on, YouTube censors, here's your chance to go ahead and put the little warning out there. But hey, did you warn Politico about this? Did you warn Politico that the narrative has been lost? The culture war on climate has been lost? Did you warn the Obama advisor that the climate strategy needs to be rethought? Yeah, but you're going to warn this, aren't you? But look, it needs to be rethought because the American people aren't buying it anymore. Hell, people around the world aren't buying it anymore. And not necessarily they're not buying the fact about climate change. What they're not buying is all these mitigation measures are making an ounce of difference and making their lives better, because they are clearly not making their lives better or more affordable, which, you know, just by looking at your electricity bill over the winter. Did you get your $50 back, by the way? I never saw a $50 credit from Governor Healy on my electric bill, and we're now in July. Where did they just kind of meld that in and expect us to believe it, or not meld it in and expect us to believe it? Anyway, I digress. But the climate war is lost. The culture war on climate is lost. AKA, people are not buying it, and we need to rethink our strategy, as Obama advisor said. Well, why is this important? Well, because here in Lowell, we keep seeing this play out, and it really you see it play out with a number of issues. You know, there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new guy occupying Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., and he's doing away with climate regulations, onerous climate regulations as he describes them. And as you look at your bill, it makes a sense. It's onerous on the consumer and the taxpayer who has to fund all these things and pay for them with higher electricity costs. But it's not just climate, it's DEI initiatives, it's genders in sports and this and that. While Washington, D.C. is creating a cultural shift across the country, here in Massachusetts and in Lowell, there's a reluctance to accept this and acknowledge it. Hell, on the Lowell City Council, they keep talking about DEI stuff. We want a report from the manager on DEI and this and that. We want a report from the manager on how ICE and immigration is being handled in the city. Like things that, culture war things that are being lost and most of the country is, moving away from. The, folks in Lowell are still hesitant to move along. And, it reminds me a little bit of remember that Gilligan's Island episode? If you're old, and I'm going to show my age here, but I'm going to talk about Gilligan's Island, the old 60s sitcom of 7 people stranded on an island and they just couldn't get rescued no matter what. But there was an episode where they started disappearing one by one. They were being captured by a Japanese soldier who didn't realize World War II was over. Now remember, Gilligan's Island was fought in the 60s. It was set in the 60s. But the storyline was this Japanese soldier. Let me call up a little graphic here for you. But there's the soldier holding Gilligan at rifle point because he thought the war was still going on and that these were Americans and that they needed to be captured. Now, you're saying, come on, Teddy, it's a sitcom, but it was actually based on reality. There were Japanese soldiers in various islands they had kind of taken over at one point or another, or were stationed there at one point or another, that did not realize that the war had ended. Remember, news was a little different in 1945 when they signed that end to the war aboard the battleship in August of 1945 with Japan, a couple of months after Germany surrendered. But, information didn't flow as freely. Phones weren't what they were, especially, you would imagine, in Pacific Islands. There was no internet. There was no Twitter to get an instant update. No Facebook marked safe from, marked safe from American imperialism, however you want to word that. That didn't exist. So there were Japanese soldiers who were fighting the war well into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and up until 1974, a Japanese soldier, I Google searched this, named Hiru Onoda, kept fighting in the Philippines until 1974. He didn't believe the war was over. And when people tried to tell him it was, he said, no, that's just American propaganda. That's just, he probably thought it was, CNN lying to him or something. Kidding. There's no CNN around in 74. But he probably didn't believe the American media. And maybe he was smarter than the rest of us for not believing media reports that the war was over. But it was, but he kept fighting. And there was this, and Gilligan's Island did a little spoof on it, showing you this picture in particular because the caricature that Gilligan's Island portrayed back in retrospect might not fly today. It was really this cartoonish figure of a Japanese soldier and the mentality. But so I chose this picture for you just because if you remember it, hopefully it jogs your memory. But I almost get the sense there's people here in Lowell and in Massachusetts who are like this poor Japanese soldier. They don't realize that certain culture wars have been lost. And one of them is, the climate culture war. It's been lost. And it's, as I told you, if you look back about a month ago, I did a Daily Pulse where I talked about how AI and the demands of energy were going to eliminate the climate movement as we know it today once and for all. And the hope is that somewhere along the path in the future, artificial intelligence will create an energy alternative that will accomplish what the climate activists want while also meeting a 21st, 22nd, 23rd century power demand that the future is dictating we have to go to. AI is here and it is dictating we have to go to. That's what we talked about in that podcast. So, here in Lowell, today, modern day, we saw this play out over the Markley Group, the data center, a few weeks ago, and it's going to play out again. It's going to play out tomorrow night. But it's okay, I guess, if climate activists, my friend Michaela, Michaela Hondas McCarthy, I love her. I think she's wrong on this whole climate thing, but it's okay if individuals, activists are still fighting this. It might be better for them if they realize the war has been lost and it's over. But hey, I can admire that. I get the group from Mass 350 and all these other environmentalists out there. I get if they're fighting for it. When the Lowell City Council hasn't realized that the climate war has been lost, I start to get a little concerned. What am I talking about? I'll tell you in a quick second. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, all of them. Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Mass and New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. Mondays are always a great time to make a switch, by the way. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to generations of families since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Prevention Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on to protect its most valuable assets since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, they'll bring you all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football one more night this season. Final home game of the season, final game of the season for the Pirates. This Friday night, July 25th at the Tusongus Center. Check it on out. Get your tickets. If you haven't gotten tickets yet, send me an email, please. info@InsideLowell.com or Teddy Panos at InsideLowell.com. I got a bunch of them. I'm happy to get them out to you or let you know how you can pick them up. Thank you to all of our Daily Pulse sponsors. All right. I set you up for tomorrow night's City Council meeting. Remember, the Daily Pulse, the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. And I just kind of highlighted a world around it kind of issue, a countrywide issue, a worldwide issue, climate change, the climate wars, new and emerging technologies, and can they meet the energy demands of today? Can they meet the energy demands of tomorrow? And I remind you, even the Obama advisors know the climate war is lost. So then, does the Lowell City Council know the climate war is lost? Maybe they will now, but there was a couple of interesting agenda items that caught my eye. And they were all, interestingly enough, they were kind of all one right after the other on the City Council agenda. This will be a few of the motions on the City Council agenda. First of all, I like Councilor Noon's motion, report on the number of ADU applications that have been submitted and or approved. Remember the ADU jihad from 2023, the summer of 2023? Everybody went to war over ADUs, and it was going to be the death of single-family zoning, and everybody and their mother was going to build an ADU right in their backyard, which means right up against your property line. And there were some calm, more reasoned voices. Ray Booten, one of them, who came on here and told you, no, you're going to get a handful of them, and that number will decrease year by year because there are guidelines, there are protections to stop it. And also it costs money to do it, and not everybody can do it. Not everybody will want to do it. And then a couple of months ago, Ray Booten told you there was what was the number he gave? Forgive me, Ray, I forget the number, but I think you said 5 of them. Up until that point, there had been only 5 that were applied for in all of 2024, the year after the Holy War in Lowell, when Governor Maura Healey made it mandatory statewide. Councilor Vesna-Noon is now going to remind us again of how silly and inconsequential that battle was. A, because Governor Healy made it mandatory statewide anyway, as we told you she would, and B, because not all that many people are doing it, even though they can. The other motions, motion 5.8 and 5.5 are kind of related. Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠, wants to make sure that sidewalk replacement projects are consistent with their previous material, concrete sidewalks replaced by concrete. Any further changes to construction materials should be approved by a majority vote of the Lowell City Council. Sounds a little bit like managing, the manager's job, but hey, we'll let the council figure that out. And I'm sure the manager will be more than happy to do what the will of his bosses is. But you know that battle line all the times, what is the manager allowed to do versus what the council should do, who's driving the bus, who's got the roadmap, all that stuff. That's going to play out right there to some degree in that issue. Also notice motion 5.8 down on the bottom. Councilor Scott wants a review of infrastructure spending by district over the last 5 years, and then to do it in the 5 years going forward. Remember when that sidewalk, concrete sidewalk issue came up for Belvedere, there was the one street on Belvedere in particular, there was some talk about, well, if we're going to do it for Belvedere, we better sure as hell make sure we do it in other districts. You know, how much money are we going to spend on Belvedere infrastructure improvements versus other neighborhoods? That's the underlying theme. Now, that's what Councilor Scott wanted to know. Like, are we doing this because this is the district that votes and is the most politically active, or are we doing this because it's the right thing to do and we're going to do it throughout the city? Again, I personally, and tie into what Councilor Scott is saying and what Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠 is trying to say, it would make sense to outline a policy and then draw it out and have that policy be consistent. Discuss the pros and cons, the costs, whatever. And if they want to institute a policy that will make it more expensive, great. Council wants to vote on that, great. Tell the taxpayers you're the ones who, helped jack up the prices or whatever. Or you're the ones who kept their concrete sidewalks or concrete streets intact. Either way, it should be spelled out, and it shouldn't be on a case-by-case basis, because that's when you open it up to things like Councilor Scott saying, hey, why are we doing one thing in the high turnout districts and maybe another thing in the other districts? Councilor Scott wasn't the only one that brought that up. Councilor Robinson kind of said the same thing, going out to like Centerville. Hey, let's be consistent here. Let's make sure we do it in an quote-unquote equitable manner. But the two motions that caught my eye the most and relate to the setup that we've had right now, motion 5.5 and motion 5.6, Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠 on one of them, Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠 and Councilor 𝐏𝐻𝐢𝐠 in motion 5.6. I'm sorry, motion 5.6 and 5.7. I apologize. Both of them did those. Sorry. I screwed that up. The first one, 5.5, was Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠's motion on concrete sidewalks. It's 5.6 and 5.7, both co-filed by Councilors 𝐁𝐢𝐠 and Councilor 𝐏𝐻𝐢𝐠. One of them wants the state and federal delegations to request that they consider options to encourage the availability of hydro-treated vegetable oil for use in emergency backup power generators here in Massachusetts to help cities meet their climate goals. Emergency backup power generators. Going back to that Markley Group discussion. Their diesel backup generators, which got approved by a 9-to-1 vote. Councilor Noon was absent. Councilor Scott, the only one to vote against it. But the other councilors, including Councilor 𝐁𝐢𝐠 and Councilor 𝐏𝐻𝐢𝐠, said, we're going to let them have this. But we all know there's 8 more generators coming. At some point, Markley's going to ask for 8 more generators to be installed. So, motion 5.6 wants the state delegation to encourage the availability of hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is a substitute to diesel fuel. Motion 5.7, however, requests City Council adopt an ordinance, I believe that's a typo, adopt an ordinance requiring large generators being installed for emergency backup power generation be capable of being fueled by hydro-treated vegetable oil or similar non-fossil fuel diesel replacement product. Again, in the interest of climate change, meeting climate goals, we're gonna force HVOs, hydro-treated vegetable oil. I guess that's a new technology in fuel. Some cars run on HVOs. I knew a guy who wanted to buy our old Friolator oil from the Athenian Corner so he could fuel his car, which he had converted to run on vegetable oil, or at the time it was lard. That since regulations have been passed and standards have kind of changed, where you now buy like a vegetable, we've moved away from lard in Friolator oils. Friolators, they make your French fries, your fried haddock, your fish and chips, all your fried seafood, all your fried foods in a Friolator. Used to be cooked in lard because it tasted much, much better. They're now cooked in other things, vegetable oils, HVOs, hydro-treated vegetable oils. So we want backup diesel generators being installed for emergency power generation to be capable of being fueled by hydro-treated vegetable oil or a similar non-fossil fuel diesel replacement product. The choice of words there, to be capable of being treated, that doesn't necessarily go to the length of saying to be capable of being run on that. It doesn't necessarily say they have to be, but they need to be capable of it. So would I have to, if I was a business person, if I was, say, the Markley Group, and I want to put in 8 generators, I'm going to have to put these in, but not necessarily use the hydro-treated vegetable oil, the HVO. Does that really make sense? If we're gonna make this play, let's make the play all the way into the end zone, right? You would think, but there are some issues with it. And I think that's why the language is a little bit muted. It's not saying you have to use HVOs, but your equipment should be capable of using HVOs. Now, why is that? Well, let's go back to our screen here and let's look at another little graphic. A little AI overview, which I did over the weekend, about hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO fuel. And right off the top, you can see it. It's generally considered more expensive than traditional diesel, with estimates suggesting it can be around 10 to 30% higher in cost. Let me repeat that. 10 to 30% higher in cost. That sounds to me like certain folks are going to have to pay an additional 10 to 30% tax, in other words. Higher cost, tax, what's the difference? If government is imposing it, it's in essence a tax. If government doesn't impose it, then you voluntarily choose whether to do it or not. You want to assume that cost, knock yourself out. You don't want to assume it, knock yourself out. But they want the city of Lowell to tell these folks, the Markley Group, let's be honest, this is inspired by the Markley Group and their upcoming motion. And for those 8 generators, when you install these 8 generators, they're going to have to be able to run on HVO, even though it's 10 to 30% more expensive. Why is it more expensive? Well, the production costs. The process of hydro-treating these vegetable oils to create HVO is more involved than diesel, which leads to higher manufacturing costs. Well, makes sense, right? It's more expensive to do it. So it's going to cost you more. It's not it, though. That's not all. The availability. Look at number 2, the second bullet point. Limited distribution and market share. Currently, HVO fuel has a smaller market share compared to diesel, and its distribution is less widespread, which can contribute to higher prices. Distribution is less widespread. In other words, people aren't using it, and it might not be as readily available. Now, if you force it to become used, what do you think that's going to do for the availability of it? Will we produce more? Sure. It'll cost more to produce it, which will jack up the price. Or, well, you might have a lack of product. Amazing. Amazing how the free market works, right? Supply, demand. If there's no demand, people aren't going to flock to it. If the government tries to create artificial demand, all they're doing is jacking up the price of it. But here's the kicker for you who think you're saving the planet by, talking about cleaner fuels than diesel fuel. Efficiency. Efficiency, AKA, does it make a difference? Does it work the way it's supposed to, the way you're told it's going to work? Can it meet the demand? Will it really save the climate? I mean, your first hint should have been where it's a more involved process to produce. Hence, that process is not as efficient, and that process is going to use up more fuel to produce it. But we digress. The HVO fuels, the people that want you to shift to HVO fuels, say it's a comparable or even better efficiency than diesel. So you're going to save money in the long term, right? That's the argument. You're going to save money in the long term. Sure, it'll cost you more to install these tanks or the equipment that will allow you to use the HVO along with diesel or instead of diesel, but you're going to get your money back in the long run in efficiencies and costs and blah, 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 blah. You hear this over and over again. Well, we've dispelled the myth about the costs because they're more expensive. And they're going to continue to be more expensive because it costs more to produce. It's a more involved process. It's not as readily available and not as easily distributed. So naturally, the cost is going to go up. But check this out. Testing by 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, which is a group that does this, showed you're only saving 2.3% fuels compared to diesel in one study that they did. Other sources indicate that fuel consumption might be slightly higher by volume with HVO due to its lower energy density. So not only might you not save anything, if you do, it'll be a lot less than they're promising you, but you might not save any fuel efficiency at all. You may pay more. Right there. Again, do an AI search. Are there benefits to it? We're told there are. Might it become more readily available? It might be. But are you going to believe the folks that are telling you it is? Aren't these the same folks who told you solar, wind, and hydropower were going to lower your electricity bills? And they were going to quickly eat up all of the supply and meet the demand? Didn't they tell you this? And it's 2025. 2 to 3% of Massachusetts' energy supply is met by solar. Another limited portion is met by wind and hydro. Most of Massachusetts' energy comes from electricity now. Electricity, because we're switching everything to electricity. This is all about electricity instead of gas. Well, our electricity is produced by natural gas, by coal, and by nuclear. Very little of Massachusetts' electricity. Certainly not enough to fuel a 21st century economy. Artificial intelligence and everything else coming down the line is fueled by these green energies, of which I'm going to guess hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, is like spitting into the Atlantic Ocean when it comes to a supply. Why do we want to mandate this? Why do we want to make it mandatory for businesses to install this technology when this technology is not yet ready to do what it's intended to do and will make it more expensive for companies who do this to conduct business? A 10 to 30% tax. Oh, by the way, it's not just companies. Individuals get backup generators. Do you not? Are there not people who have backup generators in their homes? What's the size? Because the motion doesn't indicate. This says large backup generators. So we'll have to spell out the size. Will it be just the size that the Markley Group uses, or will it include home generators? Because for the climate change people, the Mass 350 people and the other activists, the Lowell Sustainability Council, my friend the Hyphen and everybody else, why not switch them all? Why just the large ones? Why not do all of them? So that every person who has a backup generator now has to do it with HVO instead of diesel. I mean, if we're going to fix the climate, if we're going to fix what ails the planet, why are we going to take a half measure that would apply mostly to the Markleys of the world? But not just the Markleys of the world. The Markley Group is not the only entity in Lowell that uses a large backup generator. UMass Lowell uses them. Yeah, they do. Lowell General Hospital uses them. I'm going to guess Cross Point Towers uses them. You know, you drive down and you take the Industrial Ave exit off the connector and you head up towards Cross Point, and you look out to your left, there's that little fenced-in area that has a basketball court. But also, what do you see rising above it? These giant boxes, these monstrosities. I always assumed they were, you know, air-conditioned and that kind of stuff. But are they? I don't know. Are they electric supplies? Are they electric boxes, their own transformers? Are they backup generators in case power goes out at Cross Point so emergency lights can go on? Who else uses these? So while we've got a motion, let's get that one down. While we've got a motion that, look, I have not spoken to Councillor 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 or Councillor 𝐁𝐢𝐠 about it yet. I had a crazy little weekend. I haven't reached out. I'm sure I will, and I'm sure we'll hear from them by tomorrow night anyway. But this is clearly targeting the Markley Group and their 8 diesel generators that we know they need to bring forward. Right? Let's be honest. Who are we kidding? Now, it could be said that it's a long-term policy for everybody, but the people who will immediately have to deal with this is the Markley Group. But UMass Lowell may have to deal with it. The Link project will have to deal with it. Will Frontrunner City initiatives have to deal with it? That, you know, any construction that goes on along there, will that have to deal with it? You know, backup generators are becoming more and more common. Cross Point. Who knows what else is coming down? Who else in the city has Cross Point? Besides Cross Point, has these backup generators? People who own homes, will they have to deal with it? It's a motion that, while well-intentioned, I understand what the councilors are trying to do. And I could see this passing, by the way. I could very easily see at least 6 councilors getting on this thing. They're not going to want to push back against those climate activists. You know they're coming tomorrow night, right? You know they're going to come and they're going to introduce themselves. I can almost tell you to a person who they're going to be, who are going to address the council on that motion. Mass 350 representatives, the Lowell Sustainability Group, some individuals who are very much into the climate thing and have yet to acknowledge, like the person on Gilligan's Island, that the climate war has been lost. The culture war has been lost. But Lowell will have this discussion tomorrow night. I'm hoping it doesn't pass. I think it's a tremendous mistake. I think it risks future development, AI development, which is a big part of the Link project, which is a big part of the future of the world, the United States, and in particular, the city of Lowell. AI, artificial intelligence, data centers, the Link project, the Frontrunner City project. You heard over and over again, you've heard AI, artificial intelligence, discussed as vital points about the future of Lowell. a new industrial revolution in Lowell centered on innovation, technology, and yes, artificial intelligence. It's coming and we're all cheering it and we're all applauding it. So why on earth would we mess with it? Because a couple of neighbors are upset at the Markley Group? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Jack up the prices, very likely make no difference at all in fuel efficiency or emissions, whatnot. Is it worth it? By the way, one other thing. Do you know how South Lowell is always complaining? Councilor Kim Scott always brings these motions forward. The neighbors are up in arms. Councilor Scott is up in arms. That smell from that Baker's commodity plant in Billerica, right over the Lowell line, right over the South Lowell neighborhood line, Baker Commodities. Do you know what Baker Commodities does, people? It collects fry-a-later oil. One of the customers of Baker Commodities is the Athenian Corner restaurant. And many other of your Lowell restaurants, many other of your greater Lowell restaurants, your Massachusetts restaurants, and your United States restaurants use either Baker Commodities or a company like them to take your fry-a-later oil that you change every so often, depending on how often you use it. You dump out your oil, you put it into this container, and every so often Baker Commodities or some company likes it comes and empties it, and then you know what that smell is? Those oils. The smell is probably Baker Commodities storing it, and maybe they're the ones who do the conversion of my used fry-a-later oil. Maybe Baker Commodities, I don't even know. I should have Google searched that. I forgot. Maybe they're the ones who are converting it to this hydro-treated vegetable oil. Maybe that's what causes that smell. So we want to create even more smell. How good is that for the environment? How good is this higher cost, a more involved process that produces higher manufacturing costs, isn't really readily available yet, and doesn't exactly make a difference in the amount of energy that you're consuming, because it has a lower energy density and it's a more involved process than producing traditional diesel oil. Well-intentioned motion, I get it. I remember the speakers a month ago trying to stop the Markley Group thing, fell on deaf ears. But it's coming back with two councilors who voted no, kind of saying, all right, well, this is how we're going to do it going forward. I'm sure well-intentioned. I get it. But has it been researched? Has it been researched? Because the narrative is it works, right? The narrative is we're saving the climate, so you can't put a price tag on saving the planet and making the climate cleaner with less carbon in the air. But I don't know. Look at that bottom yellow highlight and look at that red/pink highlight. Are you really saving the planet? Are you really making the climate better? The air cleaner? I don't know. Technology may advance, and you will one day be able to, as I told you, AI, artificial intelligence, will get us to the point where a cleaner way to use fuel, burn fuel, will be developed. Now, that may not mean solar, wind, and water, or vegetable oil, used fry-a-later oil. It may mean natural gas, again, as natural gas was considered energy efficient in 2010, as I highlighted on a previous Daily Pulse show, when we made energy buildings more climate friendly and energy efficient through natural gas, clean natural gas, as they called it. 15 years later, we're now going to fat, lard, and vegetable oil from fry-a-laters as saving the planet. Anyway, I think the Lowell City Council should really kind of look at this again, and no matter how well-intentioned it is, consider what you're doing and consider the business risks. If you're going to tack on a 10 to 30% higher cost to the Markley Group and anybody else who is either already doing business in the city and has backup generators, or is thinking of doing business in the city and has backup generators, Draper Labs, key partner in Link, right? They're the linchpin industry of Link. They are thinking about building a lab in the Hamilton Canal Innovation District. There are discussions going on now, and I'm told it's very close. They're probably going to need a backup generator at their property, won't they? UMass Lowell uses backup generators, I'm pretty sure, and will need even more as they create these technology and innovation hubs, which can't afford to have their equipment, their data, their storage crash during a power outage. You get a handful per year. You need backup generators. The Markley Group needs these backup generators because the Markley Group serves, I guarantee you, key players in Link are clients of the Markley Group. Xfinity, Comcast, whatever you want to call them, Delta Airlines, hundreds of others. The future relies on data centers, which is what the Markley Group is. Why do we want to jack up their costs at this point? Don't we want to encourage them to expand in Lowell to meet the demand in Lowell, where the demand is going to increase because of Link, because of Frontrunner, and any other innovations that are coming down the line through UMass Lowell and what they're doing over there? Why do we want to make it more? Why do we want to encourage the Markley Group to say, you know what? Well, Drake didn't do that to us. Bill Ricca didn't. Chelmsford didn't. Well, if we have to find more land, why not find it somewhere else? Or maybe forget Greater Lowell, we can expand one of our other facilities, whether they're elsewhere in Massachusetts or in another state. And we'll just do business with these other states instead of in Massachusetts and instead of in Lowell. I don't think it's a good motion. I think it's a well-intentioned motion. I think it's a mistake. I'm sure I'll hear from those who are making the motion, and I'm sure I'll hear from those who might vote on it. But I hope that they at least look at this little data and realize maybe we should pump the brakes on this discussion until we know for sure that what we're intending to do is actually going to happen, instead of not making a difference at all, perhaps making the situation worse, and perhaps putting the city of Lowell in a position where it, I don't know, has to stand still or even backslide as the world around it changes. The world around Lowell is rapidly changing. And right now, Lowell is uniquely positioned to be a part of that change, to be a hub of that change, to be a leader in that change, not just for Lowell, but for the world around it. Let's not be that Japanese soldier on Gilligan's Island, or let's not be Hiru Unoda fighting World War II in the Philippines until 1974. Let's not be these folks who don't realize the culture war on climate is lost and the strategy needs to be rethought. All right, that's your Daily Pulse for this Monday, July 21st, Big Mouth Monday edition of the Daily Pulse. Tomorrow, Madame President Danielle McFadden is going to host the show. She's actually going to host a couple of shows this week. With Folk Festival coming up, I have to do a little bit more in my other family business. I have to go produce more used Friolator oil for Baker Commodities. So Danielle is going to host on Tuesday, tomorrow, and Thursday. Tomorrow, Scott Boyle, Lowell High football coach, will join Madame President here in the Well Point Studios, preview the upcoming Lowell High football season, and get an update on his efforts to resuscitate that long struggling program and bring it back to its glory days. looking forward to that. On Wednesday, I'll be back with former Lowell Mayor Bill Samaras and Chelmsford, Massachusetts School Superintendent Jay Lang. We had the Chelmsford Town Manager here a couple of weeks ago, Paul Cohen. Jay Lang will join us on Wednesday. On Thursday, Madame President is back with a live musical act here in the studios, the WellPoint Studios. One of the bands that will be entertaining attendees at the Lowell Folks Festival will be here, and they'll be performing live on the Daily Pulse. On Friday, we'll have the Pod Squad here. The aforementioned Michaela Hondras McCarthy, the hyphen, my pal. She may not be my pal after today's podcast. It's all right, I still love you, Mick. And Mike Batchagalupo, a.k.a. Batch. The Pod Squad will be here with the Insider's Guide to the Lowell Folk Festival. You can find out all about the festival through their website and all these other things, but there's also a festival within a festival. So we're going to give you the Insider's Guide to the Folk Festival and the festival within the festival on Friday's Daily Pulse. So full week of pulses, keeping an eye on Lowell and the world around it. Till next time, everybody, enjoy your day today. Great weather out there today. I hope you get to enjoy this day. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the other side.